Hello again. I'm back with another clock to repair, and this is something different. It's a Seth Thomas Poise alarm clock, and what makes it different is the fact that I've repaired this clock before and made a video of it about 3 years ago. It was one of the early ones that I did back before I realized that getting it to run wasn't enough. I really had to completely disassemble these things and clean and lubricate them, and that's not something I did on this one. What ended up happening was I was checking some of the clocks that I've had sitting here since then, and when I plugged this one in, I discovered that it wasn't running. It is an alarm clock. We have the dial here to set the alarm time, the stem to pull it out, the set knob functions, everything works except it doesn't run. So I've decided I'm going to look to open it up again, and this time completely take it apart. So in that regards, enough of it should be what I would consider a new video to make it worth doing. So let me get started. I have to take the back off first. There's just 4 screws here. Let me do that on my own, and then we'll take it from there. I can also mention that I took a look at the video I previously made on this one and saw that the problem with it was it had a very badly frayed power cord and needed a new one. And once I made that repair, then the clock worked. But as I said, let me start by removing the screws holding the back plate. Okay, they're out. I have to remove the alarm knob though before I can remove the back. Okay, here's the connection I made the last time, which is still very much intact. I have 4 screws holding this in on my own. Let me remove those, and then the whole mechanism is going to come out of the case. Okay, they're all out. Let's lift this up. Put that aside. One interesting thing about Seth Thomas clocks that I can show you, they have date codes on them to let you know when they were made. On the bottom is stamped 5004, which stands for April of 1950, and they also have this number stamped into the back plate as well. I'll try to show you. See if we can see this here. Right there, 5004, again, April of 1950. So what I'm going to want to do, totally remove the mechanism, undo all these screws, remove all the gears, get everything nice and clean and lubricated, and then look to reassemble it. And as in most of my videos, step 1 is to remove the hands. The first time I work on these kind of clocks, it's been so many years, I usually have trouble removing the hands, but on one that I've already done that, these should come off rather easily. And one interesting thing about Seth Thomas, one of the few clock manufacturers that has the second hand underneath the hour and the minute hand. Okay, next, what I want to do is remove the alarm dial. There's a small nut here, and it took me a while to figure this out, but it's a reverse thread. You unscrew this by turning it to the left, and I'm sorry, by turning it to the right. And in fact, I can do it with my hand. There's a nut on here that needs to be removed as well. It's attached to the whole dial. Still a bit tight. Here we go. Okay, the way this is held in here, a few screws holding the motor, 1, 2, 3, 4. But what I'm going to do first take some photos so I have a nice idea of how these gears are supposed to be positioned. And once I've done that, then I'll start taking it apart further. I've got my photos, and when I say that I plan to take it apart, clean it, lubricate it, and reassemble it, I'm assuming that the motor is still functioning fine. The reason it's not running is that there's some oil or dirt that has built up on the gears and is causing them to kind of jam or freeze up. So in any event, next let me undo the screws holding the motor in place, and once I remove those, I'll continue. And I'd also like to point out with Seth Thomas clocks with these secondhand, this cannot be removed from the front. It's actually attached to a sleeve that goes into the mechanism. Once the dial is off and everything is apart, then this can be slipped out from the dial. But I don't really need to do that at this point. So anyway, let me work on removing the motor. Let's see how easy to remove the motor. This is something I did not do on the first go around. All right, that's not bad. What I'm going to do next is let's plug it in and see if this is working. So undo my little tie, get the back plate out of the way, and let me plug it in, and we'll turn it on. Something's buzzing here. That's the alarm thing. Well, interesting. It's not running. How about that? So now I have to work on perhaps lubricating the motor. I'm not sure how easy it is to take this apart, but let me take a closer look. But it's interesting. I can feel this. Let me show what I just did. The way the motor works is there's a gear in here that's supposed to rotate, and I moved it with my finger and it was very stiff. So I gave it a little push with a screwdriver to turn it, and then when I turned it on, well, it was working. Now it's not. Oh, and now it is. So clearly the issue is I need to clean and lubricate the motor. So let me take a close look at this. I see a few screws on this side that may allow me to access the whole mechanism that's in this this housing in here. All right, let me work on that. I also want to point out one of the concerns I had in my first video, and that is the risk of breaking off the wires here from the coil. If that should happen, it's next to impossible to repair these. So I'm going to totally remove this power cord so all my manipulating won't be tugging too hard on these. So I'll undo the wire nuts. Okay. After I have the motor cleaned and lubricated, I'll reattach it, but this will be easier to handle now. The next step, let's see what happens when I undo these screws on this side. Okay, let's see how easy this comes apart. There you go. Here's the coil. And this is turning with a lot of resistance. Just removing this is kind of tight. There's a lot of dirt and oil around here, in here. So all of this needs a good cleaning and oiling. So let me get to work on that. To clean this, and I'm calling it a flywheel, I'll just use a toothbrush dipped in some Dawn with some warm water and to clean out the inside of the motor, I'll do the same, and I'll also use something like a toothpick. I'll show you, try to show just what kind of dirt could be in here. A little black on the end there, that's the thickened up oil that's preventing the stem on the flywheel from turning. So anyway, I have some cleaning to do on both sides of the motor as well as the flywheel. So let me get to work on that. And I just noticed how much buildup is on the other side of this. Let me try to show that. See all that brown coming off of here? Look at that. Anyway, back to work. The motor and the flywheel have been cleaned. Before putting it back together, I'm going to lubricate it with some synthetic clock oil. And I apply it using what are called oil pins. They're all different sizes. And you just apply very little into each end of the motor housing where the pivot from the flywheel fits. And same thing on this side. As well as either end of the flywheel. And I believe this fits in here. Okay. What I'm going to do now is secure it with the screws, reattach the power cord, and see if it's working. I've got the cord hooked up. Let me plug it in, turn it on, and it's running right off the bat. Try turning it on and off once. Very good. So I imagine I could probably reinstall this in here and it'll work. However, I still plan on taking this completely apart, cleaning and lubricate all of these gears as well. So let me take a closer look at this and figure out how I'm going to do that. This is a very unusual setup. What I want to do is remove this plate. There's 3 nuts that are holding it. In order to do that though, first I have to remove the set knob. And the other thing that I'm seeing is when I turn it over, I can see some screws in here that are holding this plate down. But I can't access them until I remove the dial. And what's unusual is that the dial seems to be sitting on springs. And to remove this, there are these little tabs that are bent through the plate. I'd have to bend them out to remove the dial. And I may end up doing that, but first I'm going to remove the plate from this side and see how far I can get with that. To take off the set knob, I'm going to grab hold of the stem. And hopefully I can pull it off with a pair of pliers. Got it. Next, I'll remove the 3 nuts over here. I got that one loose. Yeah, these are a bit tight. Two. Is one. And the last one. And let's see what happens when I lift up the plate. Well, something's binding, so let me take a closer look. Oh, wait, maybe I got it. No, something's hanging up. So, as I said, I gotta take a closer look to figure this out. I think I figured out what was binding. I believe that when I grabbed this set knob stem with my vice grip, it kind of gouged it a little bit. It roughened it up. And it was little parts of the metal were kind of sticking out, which was preventing the plate from sliding up. So with a small file, I just filed it down all around, and now I think the plate should lift off. So let's give it a try. Yep. Okay, what I'm going to do next, take several photos so I have a good idea of how these gears are arranged. And once I know where everything goes, then I'll continue. Let me show you how these come apart. I'll zoom in a bit for it. First, I have this here. And then this comes off. Underneath, I have a small washer and a spring. Whoop. This gear slides out from the side, and these two are stuck together. And I can slide this out. And the ones that remain, I can't remove. This one wants to come up, but it's underneath the gear here, which is attached to another gear inside, hard to see, which means I need to remove the dial so I can remove this plate so I can get to these gears. So that's what I'm going to work on next. Definitely unusual to take this apart. What I have to do, as I mentioned earlier, bend these tabs that are holding the dial. And of course it's on a spring, I can push it up, which gives me some clearance, and then try to bend it up. This one is accessible. This one I can get to. This one's kind of underneath the plate. That's going to be more difficult. And this one's easy. So anyway, I'll work on bending these up. And once I'm ready to remove the dial, I will continue. I undid the first two, and it immediately pushed away because of the springs, and two of the springs popped out. So you might as well watch me try to get the other two out. There's that one, along with the spring. One more. This is the hard one. Oh, there we go. It fell out. And along with it, a few gears and parts. So now I got to take a good look to figure out where these went. This I know went in here. But once that comes off, usually, you know what? These might have gone over here. Oh, I see. There's a space here. Okay, that makes my life easier. That goes there. This went here. And I believe with this gear out, where'd it go? This should come off, the second hand. Usually they fit through here, but this one is not. All right, we'll leave it for now. But at least I know where these go. And this is what I was looking for. That goes there. Okay, so now I have to see which one of these gears I can free up. This is the power interruption indicator. And all right, let me take a closer look at this, then I'll continue. This is a really unusual setup. I could remove this plate by undoing the 4 screws here. That'll access the bottom plate, but it's not going to let me get these gears off because each of them has a gear on either side of this plate. And unless I pop one of these off, it's not going to come out. And I don't like trying to remove these because when I go to put them back on, I'm never certain that I have it in the exact same position. Ideally, an alternative to clean these gears would be to place the whole thing in an ultrasonic cleaner. The problem with that is I know from past experience that the paint on this little power indicator, this will come off in an ultrasonic. One option is I might be able to position this in the water of the ultrasonic, but have this out of the water, raise it up a little bit so that everything underneath it should get cleaned, and that way I won't disturb the paint on here. So let me work on trying to clean this as best I can, along with the other gears that I've already removed, which I have over here. Once everything is cleaned, I will look to lubricate everything and reassemble it. So let me get to work on all of that. Everything has been cleaned, but before I lubricate it and reposition the gears, I have to place the dial back on. And I think the best way to do that, the one gear I have to lubricate first is this one, which fits in here. So just a little of that synthetic clock oil, just around the collar of it. And maybe just a little in here. So this goes here. And I think the easiest way to do this, and this has to go like that, is to position, I have to put the springs on here. I think it's going to be easier to do one side at a time, something like this. And if I can get this through the little holes in the plate here, okay, now I just have to bend these into position. I'll do that on my own, and then I think I'll have enough room to lift up this side and do the same thing on the opposite side. So let me work on that, and then I'll continue. I've got the springs back on one side. Now let's see if I can do it on the other. Okay, I seated the little bar and the spring and the second spring. Okay, I'll tease them into the slots and then bend them over on my own again, and then we'll take it from there. I've got the other two springs in position, and the dial is secured to the plate. Have it over here and here. I've also set up my support legs because I want to start seating the gears. Before I do that though, I have to lubricate everything, and just once again the way to do it, some synthetic oil. I use the oil pin, and you only want to place it on the ends of the pivots of the gears, on the end here and here. And before I do all of it, let's just go over how to reposition these again. Let me zoom in a little, see if I can remember it. This one would go here, and then this. That goes there. Over here, I have to seat a small spring and a little washer. And then this goes on here. This fits in here. Like that. And once everything is fully lubricated, I would have to seat this part. It's going to fit over here, at which point I just have to position all of the pivots into the holes on the plate and then secure it with the screws. And I'm pretty much going to do all that on my own. And so when I come back, all this should be fully reassembled. And again, if you're doing this on your own, that's why you took the photos. You just reverse the steps in taking it apart, and you put it back together, you know, just looking at the pictures in reverse. Anyway, let me get to work on all of that. I've got the plate back on. All the pivots are in the proper position. It's tightened up with the nuts. You can see that things look as if they're moving properly. So what I have to do next is reposition the motor. There we go. Now I'm going to secure it with a few screws, one here, one here, one here, 3 of them. Let me do that on my own, then we'll continue. The motor is back on. I want to plug it in again, turn it on. Well, the alarm works. And it's running. So what I want to do next, let me unplug it again. I need to reposition the alarm dial and then try to synchronize the clock so the hands, when I place them on, are going to be correct for what time the alarm goes off. So let me work on that. This goes first. And if you recall, all of these parts are a reverse thread, so you have to turn it to the left to tighten. Almost all the way. Okay, next a little collar sits on top, And then there's a small nut here somewhere. Here we go. Which way will this go? Again, turn it to the left to tighten. Okay, what I want to place next on here, the knob that controls turning the alarm on and off. And if I recall correctly, this is a regular thread. So to the right to tighten. There we go. I think it's on. Nope, not yet. Okay. Let's tighten this up a little bit, but I will have to take it off before I put the clock back into the case. Okay, that's off for the alarm and on. So we'll leave it on, plug it back in. Where are we here? Okay. And I'll start to turn the alarm until it rings. And let's see, there's a right way to turn it and a wrong way, and according to the back plate, I have to turn the alarm this way, backwards. Okay, it's about 7 o'clock, it's ringing. Let's try it again. I don't know why it shuts itself off when it's in this position, but let's go around again. But it's about 7:10, it seems to be ringing. More like 7:30 almost. Okay, so what I'm going to do is work on positioning the hands. I think I can take these feet off now. And if that's ringing at about 7:30, oh, I have it plugged in. Let's unplug it here. If it's ringing at 7:30, that's where we're going to put the hands, which is a little difficult. 5, 6, 7. 30 should be just about in the middle. Okay. I need to position the set knob. Oh. So let's go all around. And plug it back in. And it's running. Let's make sure the alarm is on. Okay. And if it's set for 7:30, let's start turning the alarm knob again. Have to go all the way around. Oh, did I pass it? Hang on. You know what? Let's look at it this way. Off, on, well, for whatever reason, now it's ringing at 6 o'clock. All right, I'm going to play with this some more. Oh, look at that. It's 6 o'clock. How about that? Huh. Maybe I got lucky here. Okay, the next step is going to be, I think I'm going to be placing this back into the case. Have to clean up the glass a little bit. Maybe go over the wood with a bit of my Howard's Restore finish. Try to clean up the little brass trimmer as well. So let me get to work on all of that. I just want to say, if you were wondering why I had a hard time just now with the alarm, the mistake I made, I had the hands set for 7:30, turned the alarm off, turned it around to 6 o'clock in anticipation of then turning to 7:30. And when I put the alarm back on, instead of advancing the time, I started turning the alarm set knob. And so, of course, it didn't ring until this got to 6 o'clock. So that's why I shouldn't have been surprised that it was ringing at 6, because that's where I turned it to. And bottom line is, I do believe that I have this synchronized properly. Anyway, back to work on cleaning up the glass and the case. Okay, I've cleaned the glass, went over the case with my Howard's Restore finish and polished the brass trim, and I think it came out looking good. So now it's time to get the clock back into the case. First, I'll seat the glass. And then the whole movement. Okay, what I'm going to do on my own next, 4 screws to secure this back into the case, and then I'll continue. And what I've also decided to do is I'm going to paint the back plate. It has quite a few scratches on it. Try to make a complete restoration of this one. As promised, I have the clock mechanism secured into the case. I think it's looking pretty good. And I also painted the back plate. And what I'm going to do next is secure this to the case, and then I'm going to set it up on my workbench, plug it in, and we'll give it a final look. Okay, it's set up and I have it plugged in. I'll turn it on and it's running. So there you have it. It's the Seth Thomas Poise alarm clock. This one is from April of 1950, and I have the alarm set for 10 o'clock, and I just want to double check that it's functioning accurately. So we'll advance the hands till 10. So it rang a couple of minutes before 10, which is probably about as accurate as you can get with these clocks. The only other thing that I wasn't able to repair 100% is the power interruption indicator. As you can see, it's red, and the power was off a moment ago, and when you put it back on, you turn the clock upside down and that gets flipped to white. Now it's reset. But when I turn the power off, it's supposed to drop down to red, which is not really doing that. It kind of did it on its own right there. It's slow to do it. I ended up lubricating that little device quite well, hoping that it sort of fixes itself over time. But it went down to red. I'm happy for that. Let's put it back on. Back to white. So I do hope you enjoyed the video. I'm pretty pleased with how this one came out. Definitely a nice repair and restoration, considering it's sort of a part 2 video. And that pretty much wraps things up. Bye for now.